So the story typically goes, you read a book like Be Here Now, or you read a book like Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, or you read something like The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and you end up feeling like there's something greater than yourself. Then you have some type of spiritual awakening or spiritual glimpse. A spiritual glimpse sets you up to know that there's something greater than yourself. You understand, at least to a partial degree, what you are. And then the story goes that you try to seek finding that. You go, oh, this is what that teacher was talking about. Oh, this is what this teacher was talking about. Oh, this is what Eckhart Tolle was talking about. And you go, but I don't feel that right now. So you start seeking again. You dig a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole. You go onto YouTube. You start searching about things. You start searching keywords. You start researching enlightenment. You find people like Ramana Maharshi, maybe Sadhguru, maybe some, Indian spiritual sages. You scour their videos for a while. Maybe you attend some of their you can't attend a Ramana Maharshi retreat, but maybe you attend some of their retreats. You find Muji. You dig a little bit deeper. You find there's a Siddhartha. You start finding even more sages and gurus, and then you start finding more contemporary people. Maybe Rupert Spira. Maybe if you go a bit deeper, you find his teacher Francis Lucille. Then you find other YouTubers like Angelo DeLulo, Simply Always Awake. Maybe Jeff Foster. And you keep going, and you maybe sidetrack a little bit and go down the direction of the radical non-dual approach of, Tony Parsons and Jim Newman type characters. Hopefully you don't go even deeper and find even like very miserable people talking about non-duality. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's dawned upon me. I am in this non-dual scene. There's like non-dual teachers, and you find smaller channels like mine, or even smaller channels, and you start wondering, who's the real deal? Who can I listen to? Who's really going to teach me a thing or two? Who really embodies this? Well, hopefully you're asking those questions. Who really embodies this? Who can I actually listen to? What is it I have to listen to? What do they have that I don't have? Hopefully these questions start dawning upon you, and you're going to start wanting a guide. Maybe you attend some of Rupert Spira's webinars, you realize there's loads of people in there. I might not get a chance to put my hand up. I want some more personal attention. You try to find other YouTubers, maybe Angelo DeLulo's. You attend his retreat. He doesn't do one-to-ones. You want some one-to-ones. You start looking even further and deeper. Maybe the smaller channels will do one-to-ones. Maybe I can have some one-to-ones with them. Maybe they're more available. So you start finding even smaller channels, and you do one-to-ones. And it helps, but it hasn't really solved the problem. Like, you don't really know what the problem is. The problem is you're suffering, but you don't know what the suffering is. And you're not sure where to look or where not to look or what to look at. Everything feels a little bit lost, a little bit confusing, a little bit unguided. The guidance you've had doesn't seem to fully suffice. If you're in this position right now, then I am so happy you found this video. I'm going to share with you exactly what's important, so you don't have to keep endlessly scrolling and searching around different people to try and get a lay of the land to understand exactly what the priority should be for you in your path. There's a couple of ground things we need to cover. You need to understand that all teachers that you see online, all of them, I won't name any names, but there's not a single name that I've mentioned that isn't going through this, and I've got intel, let's put it that way. Everyone is still working on this stuff. Every teacher that you find is still working through past trauma and conditioning that they haven't yet seen. Most of them actually don't even realize they have some of the trauma that they have. They're still living out patterns that are unconscious they haven't actually looked at yet. That goes for all teachers, all sages, anyone that you've ever seen. Even Nisargadatta would dismiss the fact that he smokes, saying it's a habit of the body, you see? Doesn't matter who it is, there are tendencies that are latent, that are ready to come out at the right time when they are ready to be seen. If you don't look at those, it doesn't matter how enlightened you get, they don't dissolve until they've been exposed and revealed. But that doesn't dismiss the fact of our freedom. We can be free and still run through our old conditioning and heal, so to speak, which healing in my definition is not the healing that we typically talk about. Healing is actually just simply revealing and seeing with love. You don't need to heal anything. The body does that effectively on its own, just like it digests food on its own. So as long as we're willing to acknowledge and give love and not resist the things that are within us, those things naturally on their own dissolve with time. We don't need to force that. So we can be free, but it doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, you see? So no teachers are perfect. So if you look for the perfect teacher, what's going to happen? You put them on a pedestal and you see them as an enlightened person. And then what happens is, to that same extent, you put them 10% on the pedestal, they'll come 10% off. You put them 50% on the pedestal, you'll put them 50% off. You put them 100%, they'll come 100% off. And what you'll do is you'll then judge them. You'll say, no, I thought they were this, now they're this. They were on the pedestal, now they're under the pedestal. Completely off it altogether. They don't know what they're talking about. You judge them, you ridicule everything they say as nonsense and they don't understand it. And then you carry on living your life until eventually one day you realize, oh, I was actually rejecting myself. What I was actually doing is rejecting the parts of me that are imperfect, that I think I need to have to be perfect in order for me to be happy. And you are mirroring that with your teacher. The teacher, without any effort of their own will, has ideally with effort of their own will, they take themselves off the pedestal. But if they don't, something will happen which balances the scales and puts them back into the neutral position, which is what they should be. What's a neutral position? A neutral position is simply the way that you see your friends, the way that you see your family. Your friends are super important. They're super valuable. They're super intelligent. They're super loving. They're everything that you want, but you don't put them on a pedestal, you see? So tell me, what's the difference between the teachers that you see that you think are enlightened versus your friends? Why do you think that the teacher is more special and important than your best friend or your wife or your spouse or your husband, whatever it might be? You have to take them off and put them on the playing field that they should be on, which is the same as all our other relationships. Most of the teachings that you see on YouTube are the surface level teachings. So most of the stuff that I share that you see on my channel is not the deepest stuff. If you want the deeper stuff, just look at all the videos that have the least amount of views. If you want the deeper teachings, the videos with the least amount of views are typically those ones, because the least amount of views means the teaching goes more and more direct, which fewer and fewer people are open and ready for, which means that if you just consistently share that on YouTube, you won't grow the channel and you won't actually meet those people to begin with. So you have to send out a broader signal on YouTube in order to then refine the signal once people go deeper and deeper into your container. Though some people do share the deepest teaching that they share on YouTube and claim it is the deepest teaching, and then we get stuck in another cul-de-sac. We're going to come to this. But the reason I point this out is because there's some teachers, for instance, my teacher, his teacher, the stuff on YouTube is not necessarily the deeper layers of the path, but people can mistake that they're the deeper layers of the path because YouTube, we have to talk on a specific octave. If you talk at the highest octave on YouTube, typically speaking, it doesn't quite resonate as well. So you have to kind of have what we call a compassionate approach, which is to speak slightly broader in order to then unbroaden, you could say, or refine the signal later on. The next thing to see is that any teacher that thinks they're going to remove your suffering within a couple of sessions or end your seeking in a couple of sessions is making a fundamental mistake. So if you find any teachings or teachers that try to end suffering via getting you to see your true nature, and then that's the be-all end-all thing, it's a mistaken understanding. This comes from a level of the path which is actually really important. It's important to obviously see what you are. You want to understand what you are in this moment right now, which is in a weird way like not necessarily seeing it, but unseeing things that are preventing it from being obvious to you, namely thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. So there'll be guiding principles like, what are you without your thoughts? What are you without your feelings? What are you without this? And it's called the neti-neti process. It's what we learn in the Indian traditions, typically from the Buddhist or Vedantic traditions, where we see via the absence of something. So in the same way that like, when it's the way you point to the word hole. If there's a hole in the wall, right, a circle hole, some people didn't know what I was saying when I said that before. If there's a hole in the wall, to get someone to see the hole, you have to understand the absence of something. Because the hole is not a thing. It's not an actual object. It's the absence of an object. It's an absence of a part of the wall. So you have to point to it. You can't actually point to the thing that isn't there because it's not there to point to. So you have to point to the wall and you say, and in the wall, the thing that isn't there, that's the hole. You go, okay, so this is kind of what non-dual pointings are like. They're important, they have their place, but we can't be teaching them like they're the be-all end-all teaching, because what happens is seeking reignites unless the intellect is awakened. The heart and the head have to be coherent. If they're not, we will have an enlightening experience 1,000 times, and the intellect will recreate the experience of separation. And in worst case scenario, we convince ourselves that we're free when we're not. That has happened. I can't explain how many times I've seen this over the past 2 years. There's never a time on this path where you're going to be completely done. When you think you're done, you are done. You're cooked. This is called I'm done syndrome. I'm done syndrome happens in the mid-fifth octaves, which is you can see on another video, but it's a mid-fifth octave thing where we basically think that because we've had so much spiritual insight and because we've had so many awakenings, the awakenings always feel like we're touching a big portion of the diamond. So let's just say the diamond is freedom. We think we're touching the whole diamond, but we're not. We're touching one little facet of it. And that facet feels complete, but it's not complete. And we still, at this stage, live in a paradigm where there is something to get done. There is a seeking to end. There is a thing that has to stop. This is something that we also transcend. We transcend the idea that there is a path to be done, and once we're done with it, then it's done, because that's state seeking. We're looking still for a very subtle end of something. What we notice, and the bridge that we make, which you can find out in all my other videos, is that we enter what I would call the adventure mode. The adventure mode is a place of pure receptivity, creativity, and curiosity. It's where we're having fun on the path. When you're having fun on the path, it doesn't matter whether you're seeking or not. You might want to seek because you actually enjoy it. People don't enjoy seeking. Now, this is a play with words here. It's a transcendent seeking. It's exploring your experience directly. Now, most people don't know and don't realize that if you try to explore your experience without actually caring about your experience, without actually desiring the truth about it, it goes in one ear and out the other. Which brings me to my next point. You will likely find teachers on YouTube and on this path that will try to remove your suffering. They will fall into the paradigm of you feel like you're suffering, you want to remove your suffering. So this is why you go to these teachers. But the problem is that if you are seeking to remove your suffering with the knowledge or guidance that you get, you will perpetuate the suffering that you have. So you can't actually listen to any form of spiritual insight and expect to get anything from it if you're listening to it with the intent of removing your suffering. So an example of this would be the inquiry from Ramana Maharshi. Who am I? Right? Ramana Maharshi suggests, if you don't know what you are, ask the question, who am I? So people think that, oh, okay then, Ramana Maharshi says, if I want to know myself, I should ask myself the question, who am I? That makes sense. But people convert that as, if I want to remove my suffering, I should ask myself the question, who am I? If you do that, when you ask the question, who am I, you're not actually caring about the answer. You care about removing your suffering. So all you actually care about is getting an answer that will then remove your suffering. But if you try to listen to the answer with the attempt of removing your suffering, you won't hear the answer. It'll prevent the answer from coming because you don't actually care about the answer. So it means there's no meaning, there's no intentionality imbued into it. If I say, what's 1 + 1? Right? If I can ask the question, but if I don't intend on actually hearing the answer, or if I intend on the answer removing my suffering, my intention does not equate to the energy of the answer. It equates to the energy of what the answer will be from the answer. So I'm jumping the answer. I'm trying to skip the answer to get to the end of my suffering. So therefore, the answer won't come. We have to understand this one fundamental thing. If you're going to spend any more time, spend time understanding your suffering and understanding the difference between seeking truth, genuine love of truth, curiosity, wonder, this deep innocence as a child that we had to ask questions, versus seeking all of this stuff to remove my suffering. Two very, very different things. If you do this path in order to remove your suffering, I can guarantee you'll be there for the rest of your life. In fact, you'll be there for the next lifetimes until you understand what I'm saying right now. Then the insight will come to you. So if there's any one important thing in this video, it's this. The next thing will be, there's teachers that don't know that. There's also teachers that teach from I'm done syndrome. So in other words, let's just say I had my first awakening, which was 10 years ago, right? I was not ready to teach people, right? And I'm not the one who says who's ready and who's not. That's a truly internal thing, but you have to care about whether you're ready or not. You can't just, it's not just like you willingly, randomly, oh, I've seen this, so I'm going to teach everyone this. It's like, you have to be established in this understanding. Now, for me, if I started teaching after my first glimpse 10 years ago, I would have been leading the blind. I would have had no idea. Why? Because I had a genuine experience of truth, which would have given me the inspiration to want to share it naturally, right? If you find gold, you want to give it to everyone, right? If you find enough gold. If you find enough gold, an abundance of gold, you want to go and share the treasure, right? Likewise, if you touch, taste the abundance of God, the nature of reality, you're going to want to go and shout it from the rooftops. It's so natural. The thing is, though, is that there will be teachers who do that too soon. When they do that too soon, they will try to remove your suffering, just like you're trying to remove your own suffering. So unless the teaching is predicated upon your genuine curiosity and interest, the teaching will consistently perpetuate the suffering. Why is it that you think, there's barely any teachers out there? Why is that? It's because most people are trying to remove their suffering with more suffering. So if I come to a teacher pretending I'm a seeker right now, I said, excuse me, so I'm just being completely just over exaggerating just to emphasize the point. My suffering is terrible. Please help me. What do I need to do? You need to do this. What are you without the suffering? What is the suffering? They are owning your suffering and claiming it's real, then trying to get you to do an act that will then remove the suffering. That is perpetuating the suffering, you see? Because if they're coming to you and they don't actually care about what you're saying, they just care about if what you say removes the suffering, they won't listen to it. It'll go in one ear and out the other. This is why people spend decades at retreats not gaining any more insight. Do you see this? Surely people have caught on to this by now. If you listen to remove your suffering, you get nowhere. If a teacher tries to remove your suffering, they get nowhere. And in fact, when a teacher tries to remove your suffering, they're entering the suffering too. You're literally suffering together. It's literally the blind leading the blind. Now, like I said, I'm not naming any names. I have seen this played out with even some fantastic teachers, because it's not easy to not fall into the frame of the suffering paradigm when someone or people are coming to you with the desire to remove your suffering. It's a high skill. It's something that takes a lot of attention and care and love and compassion to even know how to work around that. You see, most teachers haven't considered it. So this is something you have to consider when you're watching these videos. Maybe you're watching this video right now and you've already spent decades on the path. Well, could this not be why, you see? So it's important that we talk about this, because it's going to raise the level of standard for people who share and talk about this understanding, which is an incredibly important thing, since anyone can start a YouTube channel these days, including myself. So look out for any teacher that has the I'm done syndrome signal. The I'm done syndrome signal will look something like, this teaching is going to liberate you forever. They won't say it like this, of course, but it'll be the sentiment of, this is the highest teaching. Beyond this, you have nothing left to do, because there's either no one there to do it, or there's no doer, or whatever it might be. There will be it will be a reduction of the world. In other words, it doesn't include the world. It doesn't include duality. It doesn't come back to duality. You see? When it doesn't come back to duality, it's already halfway there. It's not the full way. All non-dual teaching should take you to duality, paradoxically. If it doesn't, it's just a partial part of the teaching, which is an incredibly important part to have. However, the thing that tricks people, the kind of pitfall, is the teachers that have had the I'm done syndrome, have caught I'm done syndrome, having a genuine spiritual realization of non-duality, who then think that that is the final be-all, end-all teaching, who then teach from that place and disregard duality again, disregard the world, disregard how to process, to move the body, and disregard basically what I would say is 90% of the rest of the entire path, which you will be on for the rest of your life. Now, when I say the path, we're talking on a transcendent level here. It's not the same path you used to be on. It is a transcendent level of the path. It's not a path in this sense. In all actuality, it's not necessarily a path. You see, I call it the startless path, because it's more, you don't start it, and the minute you start a path is the minute you're seeking again. You see? So it's a pathless path, or a startless path, in which you move with curiosity, love, wonder, and playfulness. So this is where the path is fun, because think about when you're having fun, you're not on a path. When you're playing basketball, you're playing whatever game you like, it's not a path. But there's still movements made. There's still goals to be had. The goal is to score a goal. The goal is to not touch the ball with your hand. It's there's still rules, parameters, guidelines, but it's not, you see what I mean? This is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to explain a transcendent thing to you that is likely not fully understood, but you probably intuitively understand it. It's like a child learning again. for the first time, except everything it's learning now is unlearning. Which brings me to the final point. The path that we should be looking for should be fun, and it should be predicated on fun. It should be predicated on playfulness. The path looks like, now, this was my path. This is validated by my own experience and by the teachers' experiences that have taught me. The path is basically to refine the intellect so that the intellect stops recreating suffering. This is why when we have a spiritual awakening, the intellect will recreate it. From the ages of when we're born to the ages of 20, roughly, we are developing intellect and developing knowledge, then it gets crystallized. So that 0 to 20, it took 20 years, let's say. Then after that, it gets recreated in an instant. So if you have an awakening experience to any degree, it doesn't matter how long after, instead of it taking 20 years, it now takes 2 seconds or 1 week or 1 day or an instant, you see? So the awakening experiences that we have, they don't equate to the dissolution of separation on their own, which means that there are other steps to be had. Now, these steps are things such as the integration of the body. The body will hold and store emotions. Therefore, we must do something to move the body. A lot of things in the body, it's like kind of shaking everything up so everything rises to the surface. This is the wisdom of yoga. It's also necessary for meditation. If you can't sit with yourself for at least half an hour without any distraction, this something is left to be experienced. There's things you're still running from within yourself, which means that it's probably best, if you want the most direct approach for that, you need to sit for 20 minutes and face it all. So my path was meditation. I meditated every day. There was no questions asked up until I understood meditation. Then you understand meditation's an understanding. It's the understanding of what you are. Then you live with meditation, so you don't practice it anymore. It's the nature of your being, which means then that, it doesn't mean, do I not sit there and bask in my being? Absolutely. But I'm not repeating a mantra. I'm not doing a practice. I'm just resting in what I am, you see? This is just to put it into layman's terms. Then what happens is there are emotions that have stories attached to them. So then we have the layer of thought. So you have the layer of feeling, the layer of thought. The layer of thought is usually what prevents us from feeling our emotions. It's what prevents us from looking at them. What we find is that if we have the capacity to dissolve the truth, dissolve the illusion of our thought, which means that a thought that creates suffering is always based on illusion. If we have the capacity to dissolve those thought illusions, then have the capacity to face what's within us, that's a huge step. This is what you have to learn either before or after awakening, regardless. Then we have the layer of perceptions. The layer of perceptions are the layers of things that say, these 2 chairs are objects, and they're made of this substance, and I can touch them, and I can touch the plastic. We have these concepts and ideas. Plastic is never directly experienced, you see? The duck quack is never directly experienced. You experience a sound, you experience a sensation, but you don't experience plastic, you don't experience quack, you don't experience duck. You see what I mean? So there's layers of perceptual layers that are filtered through concepts. These concepts dilute the reality that we experience and therefore create separation again. One of those experiences could be feeling like you're in the body. Another experience could be feeling like you're sitting on a chair. Like, yeah, I feel sensations sitting on a chair. I don't feel like I'm sitting on a chair. I don't get that sense. You see, I can see there's a distance between my head and the camera, but I don't feel at a distance from my head or the camera. You see? So there are perceptual layers that will recreate ignorance unless they're looked at and explored. So you have thought, feeling, and perception. Things you think about that create separation and trigger the separation. Things you feel that trigger the separation that you run from, that you don't want to face. And things you see, so to speak, hear, touch, smell, taste, whatever, the perceptual layers that make you convinced you're separate. And all these 3 layers have to be looked at. And what this actually ends up being is that you realize the path goes inward, then it goes outward. So this is how you integrate the intellect. The intellect is going to dissolve once it sees through all of these illusions because you learn to trust yourself. It's a very magical thing on this path. It's very underrated. No one talks about it. To trust yourself. To trust yourself simply means to surrender to your own intelligence. In other words, to know you have the capacity to be intelligent enough to see something is true. Most people don't believe in themselves. They don't believe that they could see the truth. Because what's going to happen then is that you're going to be self-verifying. Once you can self-verify, you have autonomy. So the only true guide, well, the only thing a true guide can ever do is help you find that self-autonomy, to take yourself through everything I just shared, to do that for yourself, not to do it for you, not to say in 3 sessions time you'll end seeking and then you just go and carry on with your life, because it'll just come back. So this is the most holistic, grounded approach. And obviously I'm being very surface level here, but this is the approach. If a teacher doesn't take you through these levels and take you through this understanding, you will find the same things coming up for you. You will not live a life of existential zest. It doesn't make sense to, right? Because if the thing that was making you suffer hasn't been uprooted on all levels, then you can, it's just obvious it's going to come back, you see? So there's a lot of different facets of this path that are important. The most important is to desire truth. The most important thing is then to see the truth of suffering. Then it's about integrating our understanding of what we essentially are experientially. So then these pointers of going to your being aware of what you are, what are you without thoughts, what are you without thinking, then they have value, then they are very important. But then you take that, okay, now that I know there's no central individual identity that is actually somewhere in my body, why does it feel like I do? Then you start going into those levels of experience. Well, it feels like I do because I feel like I'm a center in my chest. Then you go and explore the perceptions and sensations in your chest, you see? So I hope this video gives you a more of an understanding. I'm not going to tell you exactly where to go and what to do, but hopefully this video makes it painstakingly obvious. I would never suggest at first to just narrow down on one teacher or teaching. For me, it was a few. I was listening to Rupert, Francis, Sean Klein. I was listening to Greg Good. I was listening to Billy Doyle. I was attending his calls. But eventually you'll realize and it'll dawn upon you that there's one teacher that will kind of be the one that kind of does the thing. It's like kind of giving birth. There's only one parent. You see, there'll be one teacher that seems to do it for you. Not do it for you like they've done something, but it's like a teacher that just seems to be the one to help you find that autonomy within yourself. Be the one that helps reveal the teacher within you. That's the most important thing. I have a free community, the link's in the description, where we can talk and discuss about all these things every single week, completely for free. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, because I do videos that will go through questions from YouTube comments. And subscribe if you haven't. Take care. Bye.